Tonight's top story, a 15-year-old boy in Quebec could be the first minor to face terrorism-related charges in Canada. The 15-year-old robbed a convenience store at knife point. He was allegedly planning to use the money to leave the country for overseas terrorist activities. Stephen Emerson is with the Investigative Project on Terrorism. He joins us now from Washington. Stephen, you and I have been tracking these stories of young men, mostly young men, but also some young women going over to join the jihadist movement. This is the youngest that I've heard at 15, and kudos to the boy's father for ratting him out to police and saying, this is what my son did.
Yeah, I'd say kudos to the father, because usually the parents are quiet. This happened recently in Denver, where there were 16-year-old girls that were volunteered to, and actually flew over to Syria to volunteer for ISIS, and they were actually ratted out by their parents. So, you know, good for the parents for doing that, because that's really one of the only ways they're going to be found out. Unfortunately, it also represents the fact that there is a youth culture that is really attracted to this radical Islamic culture that believes in defeating and destroying the West, and that's rampant throughout Europe and throughout the United States and Canada.
Now, I know that with the whole Edward Snowden issue that started, a year or two ago, that a lot of people are understandably worried about government snooping on social media, on emails. But here we have, after the fact, this young man finding out that he had Facebook interactions with Ahmed Rouleau, the terrorist that ran down the two, one in uniform, one not, the two soldiers in Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu back in October. So this radicalization is once again happening online, and then the actions flow from there. Police don't seem to be able to get a leg up to know where the actions are coming until after they've happened.
Well, yes and no. I mean, and sometimes the RCMP and police do have indications on social media about what's going on, as the FBI did with the Sarnoff brothers in Boston. But they were unable to do anything because the laws didn't permit them to act proactively just because they were expressing radical ideas on social media. So that was one prohibition against, proactive, criminal, treatment against those that they believed would act aggressively and violently. And in the end, the pendulum swings both ways. When the Snowden disclosures happened, everyone said, oh, it's an invasion of privacy. Now people are saying, why aren't they looking at social media? Because that would be an indication of what the intent would be. The guy who almost decapitated the Canadian government, it was known ahead of time by the Canadian intelligence that this guy was a known jihadist. Why wasn't he stopped and picked up?
They had viewed him as a low-level threat at that point, is what they've told us. He was not even on their traveler's alert, as we'd been led to believe originally. Let me ask you about this. So the ISIS ideology continues to spread. They continue to get new fighters all the time. We're not making a big dent on them. I mean, they've apparently just taken another military base. They continue to gain ground here and there. Is this a losing fight that we're engaged in with what is essentially an idea as opposed to a standing army?
Well, I would tell you this, that I believe that we're mistaken in basically saying that this is the rise of new radical Islam. This is the old radical Islam. This is Al-Qaeda. This is Hamas. This is Boko Haram. This is Al-Shabaab. They're all from the same tree. When we try to distinguish from all of these movements, when we make Hamas a political movement and we treat them differently than we treat Boko Haram, and we treat Boko Haram differently than we treat ISIS, than we treat Al-Qaeda, we're making such a horrible mistake, because we're basically cutting our own faces, we're cutting our own necks. The fact of the matter is, it's all radical Islam, and they're all connected by the same one fundamental fact, that they're at war with the West. They believe the West should should be defeated, should be destroyed, and that they should be supreme. They should rule the West. That's the #1 factor, and they will do anything they can, violently, or they will use the system. Either way, that's their agenda, and we have to understand that's the Muslim Brotherhood agenda. The Muslim Brotherhood, Brian, is the parent of all of these groups.
Yeah, we've got the Muslim Brotherhood operating in Canada and the United States. You're telling me today, though, that Interpol, is it Interpol, has released an arrest warrant for the head of the Muslim Brotherhood internationally?
This is amazing, actually, because it goes back to what the United Arab Emirates did a week and a half ago. They issued a list of 85 Muslim Brotherhood groups that they designated as terrorists, not just groups that said they were MB, but front groups, including those in the United States and in Canada and in Europe. This is far beyond what the United States has done, which only 2 days ago said that the Muslim Brotherhood was nonviolent for the last 30 years, even though we have released an article on our website today showing that the Muslim Brotherhood just this year called for armed resistance and terrorism against the Israelis and against Americans. The fact of the matter is the United Arab Emirates and the Saudis are much more aggressive and much more forthcoming in acknowledging and being proactive against the Muslim Brotherhood, which is a terrorist group, and against the spiritual leader, Yusuf al-Qaradawi, who they lodged a criminal complaint and induced Interpol to issue an arrest warrant for incitement to murder, and that was just issued several hours ago.
All right, Stephen, great talking as always informative, and you can check out the Investigative Project for more.